I was going on holidays with my family. I think that's the best thing. And having a bit of time with my family. Was, I suppose I've run my own business for 12 years, and anyone who does that knows it's busy. And then I was a counsellor, a member of the Dáil, and then a minister, and that was kind of getting progressively busier. I have 4 young kids. So actually after the election and having that time for the first time in probably about 25 years or 20 years, relative quiet, God, it was great. It took a while to get used to it, but just having the time to spend some time with my kids, that was the highlight of my year. That fear after the election, I mean, I was back in the 80s, I would have been unemployed for a period, and that sense of, what do I do now? You know, what am I going to do? And how do I fill my time? And that's a hard, hard sense, a hard, fearful sort of thing. So I suppose at the same time as being happy that, God, I've got some free time now, you're also thinking, well, what do I do at that time? Or what am I going to do? And that was probably the hardest thing. Slowly but surely, by the end of the year, I was actually very busy and juggling probably 3 or 4 things, all of which were going on at the same time. So I went from being very quiet to being very busy. No, Irish people, sometimes I'm amused, you hear on radio or something, people are talking, say, Irish politicians are not in touch with people. And they don't realise that there's no one as in touch with people compared to Irish politicians. Like, of all, probably any politician or political group in the world, there's no one else goes knocking on doors the way Irish politicians do, to the extent, I think. Because, literally, if you're running for election, in a general election, you'll knock on thousands of doors, and you're approaching a door where you're literally saying to someone, well, here I am, and what do you think of what's going on, or is there any issues that are bothering you? So you're actually going with an open, you're not going, you very stupidly went to knock on the door, oh, this is what I think. You're actually, most instances, going to say, what do you think? And what are the issues that are of matter to you? So Irish people are pretty much in touch. Irish politicians are more in touch with people probably than just about any other section of our society, literally by dint of physically going out. Even if you're in the Dáil, even if you're elected, even if you're a minister, you go out and talk to people. I wasn't that surprised. I had hoped I'd hold my seats, and I really busted a gut to try and hold on to a seat. Because I thought, I was really proud to be a member of the Dáil, to represent people in the Dáil, and it was worth fighting for. I thought I was going to get elected just before the election. I did an opinion poll which said, yeah, I should hopefully just about hold the seat. Didn't happen. And if anything, during the campaign it got more and more less likely. Although, I mean, I thought I ran a really good campaign, and we really canvassed hard, really did everything we probably could do to try and get elected. It wasn't to be. I read just last year I was reading Ted Kennedy's biography, and one of the things I think in that came clear is politics is about perseverance. He fought for all his life trying to get medical care for the American people. Didn't get it until the moment of his death. And you take knocks, you accept them. You political knocks, you accept electoral decisions, you accept them. But if you believe in what you stand for, you should be willing to go back and kind of, let's give us another chance. This is what we stand for, and you may not have agreed with it 6 months or a year ago, but actually think about it again, look at it this way, and you hope maybe to represent that idea again in the future.
Do you think people will do that?
I hope so. I think nothing's for certain. You never take anything for granted in politics. But I think actually there's an underlying, particularly for green politics, there's an underlying truth. I believe in what we're saying, an underlying scientific and economic reality around what we're saying that I think makes us still relevant. And I think some of the solutions we have to offer are still relevant. And I think people will vote Green again, because then it'll be representing those type of solutions that I think do make sense. It was a shared experience, and that kind of made it easier in some ways. I think it was something that was a common experience. What was really hard for us that we got less than 2% of the vote, because that meant you don't get any resources, you don't get any state support at all. So that was a hard knock, but. And it was tough, but we were quite united, as I said, and united as well with the people who worked on the campaign, because look, you look at the public figures, but actually behind each public figure there's teams of people who are kind of canvassing, who are advising, who are working, so it was those people as well that you feel that certain sense of solidarity. No, I don't think so. I don't think. I think we were punished by the electorate, having gone into government, and some things we did in government, and I think. I don't think there was a personality issue. I think it was broader political factors at force. So no, I don't think that would have made a huge difference. I mean, listen, life, no matter what job you're in, you look, oh God, I've done that differently, I would have done that things differently.
Anyone in particular strikes out?
I mean, I could start with in almost chronological order, but I think one of the big failings, we had called the property bubble for years. We had said, this thing is overblown, this thing is going to crash, this thing is not sensible, this thing is not sustainable. And I think we should have had maybe the courage of our convictions when we went into government in 2007 to say we got to start cutting budgets now, in advance of the bust. And we didn't get that done. We were new to government. But if you look at some of the decisions made, particularly in 2007, 2008, when social welfare went up, public sector pay went up, budgets across the board went up, and we didn't see the banking crash properly. Like we should have been in there in Anglo, just burrowing in to find out, hold on a sec here, how can you do this trick, as it were, of just keeping growing your bank book every year? In hindsight, in my mind, one of the things I'd be kind of most regretful of is even in that first year, while we understood the underlying, I think unlike any other party, the underlying fallacy of the property bubble, we didn't actually use our first year in government. It was a difficult time, but we should have used that first year to come in and say, everything's about to crash, cut everything, get into the banks and investigate what the level of over-indebtedness was. I think that actually is one of the things that I look back myself personally and think, we should have done that, because it's much easier not to give the pay rise, not to give the public sector or the social welfare increase, than it is to take them away, which we had to do 2 years later, 3 years later. I think of today as an example, just as a typical day, I'm in the office, I'm in here every day, 9 to 6, like a standard working day. And I'd be issuing a press release today, putting it up on the website, and so I'm saying something, I'm trying to follow what's happening politically. I have a lot of experience. I can afford to do it because, as people know, you get severance payments as a minister, so that keeps me going and has allowed me to keep going and do this job. So it's not paid, it's voluntary, but it's paid in that sense that I'm not destitute. We're very well looked after. That whole part of the legacy of the boom is that the pensions and other arrangements were very, very good, unacceptably so, I think, for or unnecessarily so for people in the public service. And I think that allows me to do what I'm doing, and it's everyday, ordinary politics, but done for the Green Party from a voluntary approach. No, I think they will. I think there's a number of strengths we have, despite being, as I said, well, being voluntary can give you strengths in some ways. It brings its own strengths. But we're also part of an international movement. Like, one of the things I'm doing quite a bit is travelling, because we have a lot of colleagues and a lot of strength in Brussels and in Berlin and in London, Green parties across Europe and elsewhere that we work very closely with. And I think, so when I go and meet the head of the German Green Party, he could well be in government in 2 years' time. That gives us an influence and an importance that I think maybe other smaller Irish political parties in the past didn't have. But also, there's a whole wider environmental movement out there. So when I'm going talking to people with an interest in a range of different environmental issues and agendas, and when I say environmental, I mean from the very broadest perspective: social environmental, economic environmental, as well as ecological. There are issues there that are not represented in the government, or not even represented in the Dáil at the present time. And we can actually, and should be, I think, a voice for them, that way of thinking, that philosophy. And it's a global philosophy. There's a Green Party in every country in the world. It's growing. it's needed in my mind, and I think we can, we can get it right, get it wrong, and short term make mistakes and have electoral success and electoral failures. But it doesn't take away the need or the existence of that alternative political view of the world.